this is Amit. Welcomes you all to the e-learning module of Balurghat Mahila Mahavidyalaya. Today, I will be teaching Samuel Johnson's poem London, an imitation of Juvenal's third satire from DC3 of second semester English Honours students. Now, for a better understanding of the poem, I have divided the lectures into three parts. The first part is about the introduction of the poem, the second, reading about the text, the third, analyzing themes, symbols of the poem, and some prospective questions. Let's begin today's discussion. Our poet, Samuel Johnson, who is often referred as Dr. Johnson, was born in 18 September 1709 in Lichfield, Staffordshire, to Michael Johnson, who is a bookseller, and his wife Sarah Ford. He completed his early education from Lichfield Grammar School, where he excelled in Latin. Later he joined Pembroke College of Oxford, but he could not continue his education due to some financial crisis. For a short period of time, he worked as a teacher, and this is the time when he started writing in Gentleman's Magazine. Johnson's translation of Pope's Messiah, which he translated into Latin, was published in 1731. Although this work brought him appreciation, but it did not change the state of poverty and ill health in which Johnson was trapped in. In 1732, Johnson found employment as a usher at Market Boswell Grammar School. It is during this time Johnson conceived one of his significant work, A Voyage to Abyssinia, an English version of the French travel books. This became his first published work, and he was paid 5 guineas for it. In 1735, he married Elizabeth Porter, a widow with some fortune, and began to establish a private academy for students. Unfortunately, the venture was a failure, and by 1737, Johnson came back to London and focused on writing. In 1738, Johnson began to write for the Gentleman's Magazine again, and he published his first famous work, the poem London. For the next few decades, his literary works dominated his age, and he emerged as an excellent critic. His notable works are A Dictionary of the English Language, The Rambler, The Vanity of Human Wishes, The Idler, and play The Idyll. By the end of 18th century, Johnson's health began to deteriorate. On December 13, 1783, he died, and his body was buried in Westminster Abbey. Talking about the poem, we have to know about the history in which Johnson was living, or the historical background of Johnson's time. Johnson was a new classical poet, which began in 1660 with Charles II's restoring of monarchy and lasted till 1798, prior to William Wordsworth's publication of lyrical ballads, which marked as the beginning of romantic poets. This whole new classical period often divided into 3 sub-periods. The first part begins 1660 to 1700, is known as Restoration period. The second one, 1700 from 1745, is known as Augustine period, and from 1745 till 1798 is regarded as the age of prose and reason, or the transition period. This Restoration period, which began in 1660 and lasted till 1700, is not only for Charles II's restoring of monarchy, but also other incidents were there which termed it as the Restoration period, like the reopening of theatre, which was closed in 1642 because of the Civil War, get reopened in 1660. And the two incidents, first one is the Great Plague in 1665, which causes 1/3 of the population death in London, and the second one is Great Fire of London that happened in 1665, which devastated almost the whole architecture of London. Now these are the incidents which actually termed this particular time period as a restoration period. And now the second one, the Augustine age from 1700 to 1745. Now why this particular period is termed as Augustine period? For knowing it, we have to go back to Roman Empire. Augustus Caesar was the emperor of Rome from 27 BC to 14 AD. Now, his time period was regarded as one of the golden period of Roman literature, because during this time writers like Virgil, Horace, Propitius, Livy, Juvenal were writing, and they were in excellence. Writers of 1700 to 1745 in English history, English authors like John Dryden, Jonathan Swift, Alexander Pope, Henry Fielding, Samuel Johnson, Samuel Richardson, they started following or kind of imitating the works of these particular writers from Rome. Now, it's a kind of imitation, not only from the subject matter, but from the text, from the format, from the style. Now, they started imitating, and this makes the period or termed as Augustine period. And the last one, from 1745 to 1798, is regarded as the age of transition period or age of prose and reason. During this time period from 1745 to 1798, two incidents happened. One is Industrial Revolution and the second one is French Revolution. That transforms a period from which concentrated on urban literature, court-centric literature, and started focusing on nature-oriented society, nature-oriented writings. Regarding this transition period, we will discuss in our later assignments, which I'm going to teach you, that is Henry Fielding's Joseph Andrews. For today's lesson, today's class, we will focus on Augustine period, in which our poet Dr. Johnson belongs. Samuel Johnson's poem London was first published in 1738 anonymously. His work, solely based on Juvenal's third satire, which describes Imbricius' journey from Rome to Cumae in order to escape the vices and dangerous life of capital city of Rome. In Johnson's version, it is Thales who have travelled to Cambria, Wales, to escape from the problems of London. Johnson's reworking of Juvenal's original operates as a border of social and political indictment of the political setting and social backdrop of England. His project seemed to have struck a chord with the burgeoning population of readers, as London was printed in numerous subsequent editions across a variety of journals and magazines. This can be owed to the extremely political and topical nature of London, as it was rife with allusions to matters like the Licensing Act of 1737 and the Excise Bill of 1733. Johnson's use of the imitation form as a method of satirizing was brilliant, as it was able to accommodate topicality with the general tone of the Augustine age. Today's class will stop here. And then if you have any queries, WhatsApp me, and my number is in the description box. In the next class, we will discuss or we will read the text. Until now, goodbye. Stay home and stay safe.